In 1913, American parents looking to save a few pennies discovered a highly unusual travel hack. They figured out how to legally mail their children. That year, the U.S. Postal Service started accepting packages weighing over 4 pounds. Citizens immediately started testing the system, shipping bricks, eggs, and live chickens. Then, an Ohio family decided to push the boundaries. They stuck a 15-cent stamp on their son's coat and handed him over to the postman for delivery to his grandmother's house a mile away. It worked. Once the word got out, at least 7 other families boxed up their kids and sent them through the mail. One young girl was shipped over 700 miles from Florida to Virginia. By 1915, the Postmaster General was forced to draft an official regulation stating that you cannot put a human being in the mail. We like to think of the official historical record as a strictly logical ledger. We assume government paperwork is reserved for rational events. Yet, if you dig into the archives, you find moments where bureaucracy is forced to validate absolute absurdity. Detailed documentation of events that defy standard explanation resides in the high-level archives of executive offices, military intelligence units, and the justice system. Take former President John Quincy Adams. He served on the Supreme Court, spoke 7 languages, and had an estimated IQ of 175. He was arguably one of the most intellectual leaders of his era. Yet he is the same man who officially approved one of the most baffling federal expeditions in American history. In the 1820s, Adams was asked to back the hollow earth theory. The idea proposed that the Earth was entirely empty inside, and that hidden pathways at the North and South Poles led to subterranean worlds. The objective was to make contact with a race of people and establish trade for their underground riches, specifically a bounty of thrifty vegetables. This was a genuine operational plan. Adams was fully prepared to recruit 100 volunteer prospectors to dig deep into the earth and physically locate these hidden pathways, entirely backed by the executive power and funding of the United States. The only thing that stopped the mission was the election cycle. Adams was voted out in favor of Andrew Jackson, who quickly canceled the funding. It shows that undeniable genius and maximum presidential power offer no immunity to endorsing the impossible. When you move from the executive branch to law enforcement, the archives get much darker. Consider the official files of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police concerning a highly localized geographical anomaly. Deep in the Nahanni National Park of northwest Canada lies a 200-mile gorge officially nicknamed the Valley of the Headless Men. In 1904, 2 brothers named Willie and Frank McLeod paddled down this river looking for gold. 2 years later, a search party found their bodies, fully clothed on the riverbank. Both men were entirely missing their heads. The Mounties quickly theorized that the brothers died of starvation, and scavengers eventually made off with the remains. The glaring flaw in that official narrative is the extreme precision required. You have to believe that wolves or grizzly bears selectively decapitated 2 humans without disturbing their clothing. Over the next few decades, at least 2 more prospectors were found dead in the exact same gorge under the exact same headless circumstances. Even modern law enforcement struggles when geography defies logic. Take the Round Valley Reservoir, known as the New Jersey Triangle. Unlike the expansive, unpredictable open ocean, this is a tiny, completely man-made body of water with perfectly calm conditions. Yet police records from the 1970s onward document a deeply disturbing pattern. Fishermen take small aluminum boats out onto the water. Days later, their boats are found capsized with life jackets, oars, and camping gear perfectly intact, but the victims vanish. In multiple incidents, authorities have deployed divers and even state-of-the-art submarines into the 180-foot depths, turning up absolutely 0 remains. When police apply standard forensic methodology to these tightly concentrated geographical anomalies, the official case files simply break down into permanent, unsolvable dead ends. Sometimes, instead of hiding from the unexplainable, the government weaponizes it. During the Cold War, the CIA and the U.S. military faced the impossible hurdle of gathering intelligence from deep within hostile Soviet territory. Their solution was to establish and heavily fund Operation Stargate. Operating out of Fort Meade in Maryland, a small team of men were trained in a psychological discipline known as remote viewing. The goal was psychic spying. The military wanted them to use the power of their minds to locate ballistic missile submarines and hidden silos without ever risking a physical agent behind enemy lines. This chart illustrates the statistical anomaly of the program. While you would expect a baseline chance of guessing these targets blindly to be incredibly low, declassified intelligence estimates show the remote viewers achieving a 70 to 80% success rate. One of the program's star performers, Joseph McMoneagle, claimed he could see deep into a Russian shipyard. During a session, he sketched out the construction of a massive, heavily armed vessel. His drawings precisely matched the Typhoon class of Soviet ballistic missile submarines, entirely predicting their existence 6 months before the designs were made public. The military spent decades pouring millions of dollars into Operation Stargate. That financial investment stands as a quiet, bureaucratic admission that human consciousness can physically bypass enemy lines. The military has the luxury of keeping its operations classified, but what happens when the impossible takes the witness stand in a public court of law? In the 1980s, a young boy in India named Titu began telling his family that his actual name was Suresh Verma. He claimed he owned a radio shop in a neighboring city, had a wife named Uma, and vividly remembered being murdered. Titu's claims included specific, unreleased crime scene details and the identity of his killer, a man Suresh had done business with. When police noted that Titu possessed birthmarks that perfectly aligned with the entry and exit wounds found in Suresh's 1983 autopsy, the court took the extraordinary step of admitting this circumstantial evidence into the docket. By accepting these claims as credible witness testimony, the justice system reopened the case, leading to the suspects being charged and convicted of murder. You might assume that kind of legal maneuver only happens overseas, but the United States has its own supernatural jurisprudence. In 1897, a West Virginia woman named Zona Shu was found dead at the bottom of her stairs. The local doctor briefly examined her, declared the cause of death an eternal faint, a polite term for sudden heart failure, and she was quickly buried. Weeks later, Zona's grieving mother began having vivid, repetitive visions of her daughter appearing at the foot of her bed, pointing directly at her own throat to communicate that she had been strangled. The mother hounded the authorities until they agreed to exhume the body. The forensic findings exactly matched the ghost's claims. Zona's neck had been broken, and there were clear marks of strangulation. Based on an exhumation prompted entirely by an apparition, the jury found Zona's husband guilty of murder. In both international and domestic courts, legal precedents exist where the dead successfully testified to secure their own killers' convictions. Hollow Earth expeditions, CIA psychic warfare, and ghost testimony occupy a place in the verified human record. Our most rigorous institutions are designed entirely around logic, science, and the strict rules of law. Yet when they are confronted with overwhelming, impossible facts, they have repeatedly been forced to bend to the unexplainable. The historical archive is not a fortress of perfect logic. When you dig deep enough, you realize that the dividing line between an unbelievable myth and a hardened historical fact is often just a single piece of approved government